والصلاة والسلام على حبيب المصطفى وعلى آله وأصحابه وعلى من تبعهم أما بعد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Amin ya Rabbal Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. It's probably one of the most important workshops for two reasons. Number one is because we're learning about the laws of Zakat, which is one of the pillars of Islam. Which sequence does it come in? Is it the first, second, or third, or fourth pillar of Islam? Which one is it? Sorry? Third. Is that the third pillar of Islam? And its obligation is equal to the obligation of Salah. So if anyone was to deny the obligation of Zakat, then they don't become Muslim. Like somebody who denies the obligation of Salah, they're no longer a Muslim. So Zakat, it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mandated upon the believers right from the beginning, even before migrations. Even before migration. But however, the detailed rules, the specific amount was not prescribed until after the Prophet ﷺ to Medina. That's when the detailed laws of Zakat were revealed. So basically, this is the content. So this is the content. Again, this is just a very brief step-by-step process. This was the original content I covered. However, some of them I'm not going to be discussing in this session because of the lack of time. But again, all of this is discussed in much detail and is videos available on our website. So first of all, let's begin by what is Zakat. It literally means purity, flourishing, and increase. What that basically means is that what Zakat actually does, it purifies a person's wealth. So if, for example, if there's any wealth, as long as it's a halal income, okay, right? But if that wealth has somehow been contaminated through doubtful source or through unlawful source, the earning itself is halal, that's fine. But there may be certain times that where in our day-to-day transaction, there might be possibility that some of our wealth may be contaminated, for example. Then by Zakat, by giving Zakat, it purifies the entire wealth. Now this is different from giving Zakat from calculating Zakat on unlawful wealth. I'm going to discuss this anyway, that if someone's wealth is entirely unlawful and they know that the earning is haram, for example, and the entire income is haram, then there is no Zakat on that. Because Zakat is only from pure wealth. The earning has to be halal. Because first of all, that person's whole entire income is not permissible to begin with. If it's not permissible to begin with, how is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept charity from that? So what that person needs to do is, he has to give all the wealth into, dispose of it by giving it to the most needy people without the intention of reward, and they have to change their occupation so that they can earn halal. As simple as that. But here, what we're talking about purifying is that by giving Zakat, it purifies one's entire wealth, which is halal, and making it pleasing to Almighty Allah. Also, flourish and increase. It can also mean, literally, flourish and increase, is because that when we give Zakat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases the barakah in the wealth. And technically, so that's the literal meaning. So technical meaning is transferring ownership of that portion of wealth which the Sharia has stipulated for a poor, non-Hashmi or non-servant Muslim, seizing all benefits in every aspect from all that. So basically what that means, in a nutshell, that Zakat literally means, number one is that your wealth, the Shari'i mal, the wealth that you have, giving up a portion of that wealth, which is 2.5%. Giving up a portion of that wealth, 2.5%, to the poor people. So what you're doing is you're taking that out of your ownership and you're giving it to the poor person. Someone who is poor. Number two is non-Hashmi. Non-Hashmi, because Hashmis are those who are from the family who are from the Banu Hashim, which is one of the sub-tribes of the Quraysh. The Prophet moved from the Banu Hashim. And there's a lot of detailed discussion on that. And neither to his own servant, and by cutting off, by severing all benefit from the owner for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we're giving Zakat, we're taking 2.5% of our wealth, we're giving it with the intention that we give this our Zakat money for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, giving it to the poor and the destitute and those who are rightful recipients of Zakat. Why? Is because by doing so, you're sharing your wealth with the poor, And the poor, they have a right into your wealth. They have a right for ownership in your wealth. They have a right in your own wealth, which is 2.5%. And when you're giving it for the sake of Allah, because that intention makes an ibadah. So one is just giving charity to no purpose without an intention. That's just welfare. But what makes it ibadah is the intention. So that's why intention is necessary. Is that clear to so far? Is it easy to follow? Now I'm just going to continue. If there's any part that's difficult to understand, please do stop me. I will then repeat myself, okay? Step-by-step process. Simple. There are 3 basic steps. Number 1 is identify your zakatable assets. So first is identify your zakatable assets. Number 2, deduct all essentials, liabilities, and short-term loans. I mentioned short-term loans, okay? I'll discuss that shortly what that means, okay? So deduct all essentials, liabilities, meaning bills, etc., and short-term loans within that year. You deduct all of that. So there's this term that we're using, deductible, non-deductible. Please understand what that means. Deductible, deductible is 20 years. Take it away, right? When I use the term deductible, what that means is that that's excluded from zakat calculation. So let's say give the wealth. I've got wealth here, okay, right? Now, when I say deductible, so let's say this part of the wealth is part of my debt, for example, okay? I owe somebody money, it's a short-term debt, or my bills, etc., okay, right? So that is deductible. That means that's excluded from zakat calculation. I only calculate zakat on this. And when I use the term non-deductible, what does that mean? It's included. Yes? So that means that will be part of the zakat calculation. So I will have to calculate zakat on all of these wealths. Is that clear? So just understand this term. Deductible means excluded. Non-deductible means included. Simple as that. So it says here step 2 means deduct all essentials, liabilities, and short-term loans. They're not included in zakat. Then number 3, once you've got that, calculate the net zakat of the zakat of assets at the end of the new year. In our case, it's %. Is that understood? So this is a simple step-by-step process when it comes to calculating zakat. Now let's go into the details of each one. Now this is where we go into the nisab. Now gold, silver, cash and mixed assets. Now let me give you a brief what this means. So when it comes to gold, the Sharia has already stipulated the nisab of zakat. Okay, right? Which was now the it can be technical here, right? First one, how do we come to these? 87.48, 612.36, right? How do we come to these figures to begin with, right? Now, first thing to remember is that in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was something called dinar and dirham, okay? There was dinar and there was dirham. Dinar and dirham were the prevalent currencies at the time, and the Prophet ﷺ himself stipulated the nisab. He is the one that stipulated that this is the nisab. So for example, for the dinar, which is the gold coin, the Prophet ﷺ stipulated 20 dinars. So the Prophet ﷺ said that anyone who has 20 dinars gold coin, then zakat becomes necessary of 2.5% of that, okay? And when it comes to silver coin, which is dirham, the Prophet ﷺ stipulated 200 dirhams. 200 dirhams. So if anybody wants to have 200 dirhams or 200 dirham, they will have to give 2.5% of that. Is that clear? Now, how is this calculated? So just to remember that one dirham is equivalent to today, in today's currency, 3.061 grams. So one silver coin is equivalent to 3.061 grams. Is that clear? And gold is equivalent to, by the way, this is being recorded, isn't it here? Is it being recorded? That's perfect. So you can remember, we'll go back to this, okay? So how is this? How do we calculate dirham into modern day calculations? So how do we convert it? So how do we convert modern day calculation? So one gold silver coin is equivalent to in today's value, 3.061 grams silver. Okay, 3.061 grams silver. And one gold dinar is equivalent to 4.375. 4.375. So if you multiply the figures, this is what you get. Yes. So if you were to multiply 4.375 times 20 dinar, this is the figure that you get, 87.48 grams. And if you were to multiply multiply 3.061 grams of silver to 200 dirhams, this is the figure that you get, 636. So is that clear? Now, move on to the next slide, is zakatable assets and non-zakatable assets. So zakatable assets divided into two, which are cash, gold, silver, trading stocks, personal benefits, business stocks, animal stocks, agricultural lands, all are zakatable. Non-zakatable assets, property, meaning your own property, personal property, household utensils, appliances, vehicles, clothes, diamonds, jewels, pearls, metals, etc. All these are non-zakatable. So if you've got diamonds, if you've got phones, if you've got not jewelry, not what jewels, rubies for example, okay, right, or pearls, or vehicles that you use for personal use, they are not zakatable. Even if you have about 4 or 5 vehicles, but they're not used for trading, I don't think there's no zakat in them. Is that understood? Is that clear so far? Okay, that's fine. This is the most important slide here, where everybody's been waiting for. Oops, there you go. So the current nisab of cash, now I actually checked this yesterday. This is the up-to-date calculation which I had used in the previous session. So obviously on the YouTube, because the slides on YouTube gives you a figure, because that was the figure that was calculated last year. So this is the up-to-date figure now. So if somebody wants to know that what's the current nisab in cash, this is it. So when it comes to cash, depending upon which value that you go by. So we go by majority silver. So if you look at gold value, 1 gram of gold today, the value is £51.65. So 1 gram of gold is equivalent to £51.65. So if you were to calculate that, if you were to calculate the nisab of cash in terms of gold value, it's 87.48 times 51.6 equals to £4,518.34. So if anybody goes by and follows the view of gold's, of the nisab rate of the gold value, this is the nisab, which means if you possess savings of money less than that, this was zakat on you. Okay. Now, if measured by silver value, then the current rate of silver gram is 57 pence. And I'm kind of surprised because this has not changed. This was same last year, 57 pence. Right, 56 or 57, but gold has changed significantly because last year gold was about £48 or £49. Now it's going to be £51.65. But silver has stayed the same, only 1 pence difference. So the current value of silver is 57 pence per gram. So 612.36 equals to £349.04. This is now the current nisab of cash. So if you have cash savings equal or more to this, then zakat is compulsory for you. Less than that, so if you go about £300, let's say, there's a zakat on you. Is that clear so far? So this is the equal. So this is the main figure we need to remember. Majority of the scholars rule by the silver value, so you need to remember now. So we need to remember now, because this is the same as last year, right? There's only 1 pence difference. So this is the likelihood. This will be the likelihood nisab threshold for this amount. So £349.04. Or you can round it up by £350, even though that's fine, so it's no problem. Sorry,
real property, loan paid, I have real property, going to pay the zakat.
Freehold property?
Yeah.
Okay, are you selling that property? Are you selling it?
No, I'm not selling it.
Have you put it on rent?
Yes.
You put it on rent?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the question. So the revenue they get to rent, you have to pay zakat on that. Yeah. Okay, so there's 2 things. One is you're buying and selling property. So if you're buying and selling property, you calculate zakat on the market value. Yes?
Yeah.
Because that becomes a zakat of asset. But if you just rent out property, right, then the rent that you receive, right, you pay zakat on that provided from physical conditions.
I find very difficult to calculate money, the money coming.
Yeah. So okay, so that's the one thing. So again, I go to the step by step. So I give a general advice at the end. So the easiest way, the simplest advice I give to people. Now, because money fluctuates during the year, it doesn't matter. The Hanafi method, the way the calculate zakat is very easy. Don't worry about the fluctuation. Look at and what was the nisab, what was the zakat that we said? First of Ramadan, is it? Yes. Hypothetically. So first of Ramadan, whatever you've got in your savings, rent or whatever, you pay zakat on that.
I think this is the easy way.
That's the easiest way.
How much I have, like first of Ramadan, how much I have
Yeah. So because money can fluctuate, as long as you've got money in your saving, now remember it's an important question. As long as you've got money, as long as you've got savings in your account, so even if it fluctuates, for example, bills and this and that, etc., it doesn't matter. So that's what the ulama, the Hanafi fuqahas say. Jury say that don't worry about the fluctuation. As long as there's still money in your bank account, right towards the end of your zakat, your zakat due date, whatever money that you have, whatever savings you have there, you can calculate zakat on that. How to calculate zakat on mortgage? Now, the easiest way to remember is that mortgage, they are considered to be long-term debts. So how is it? It's simple. Now, only 1 year of loan will be deducted and not the entire amount. So let me give you an example. A person has a loan of £100,000. You take a mortgage out of £100,000, right? Of a capital over 20 years. So every year, he is paying £5,000. So let's say every year, let's say for example, he's paying about £500 a month or something like that, or £600 or whatever. It totals up to £5,000 a year. So then only 5,000 will be deducted for zakat and not the entire amount. Now why is that? It's because if somebody, let's say, is in £100,000, because they tell you, don't they, that this is your actual capital, £100,000. So if you were to include all of that as your debt, then that means there's no zakat on you. So for example, let's say for a moment, if she's got gold, she says, look, because I'm in £100,000 debt, okay, then there's no zakat. So nobody can pay zakat then. You get the point now. That's the reason why. So my understanding is that, the short-term and long-term debt has primarily been specified because of mortgage and other long-term debts are not being included. So that's mainly the reason why we have the short-term and long-term debt. So is that clear? So 5,000 will only be deducted, but not the entire, which also now suggests 95,000. Okay, so the 95,000 will be included. Now, what about the interest? What about the interest? Is that deducted? The interest will not be deducted as that is not considered a valid loan. Yes, because Islam also doesn't recognize interest. So that's not considered to be a valid loan. So that's not because. So in the above case, if he calculates that he will end up paying £150,000, then the £50,000 will not be deducted. Because in the mortgage, they tell you that this £100,000, then they tell you that from this period, £50,000 is your interest. That is not going to be deducted because Sharia, Islam does not recognize that as a valid debt because it's haram to pay to big interest. Yeah. So is that clear? The creditor, which means that you are the one who's lent money. So let's say you lend £10,000. So the brother Mashallah gave the example of Mukaddi Hasana. So you're the creditor. You lend somebody £10,000. Okay. So when does zakat become compulsory for him then? So now the scholars state that when it comes to people owing you money, right, there are different categories. So because when people owe you money, that could be different forms. Let's say you're an employee, your employee owes you money, for example. Or let's say, for example, anyone a plumber, or electrician. So let's say, for example, you're a plumber, right? You went and did some work in somebody's house. Now they owe you, let's say, £600. Isn't it? So you provide the service, they owe you money along the way. So you're like the creditor. In other words, what this means is that somebody owes you money. So in these kind of examples, what do you do in this case? How does this plumber, for example, this electrician, how will he calculate his zakat of the money that he has that's owed to him in hundreds or in thousands? So first of all, let's categorize the debts. How do the scholars categorize the debts? So there's something called a strong debt, there's something called a medium debt, and there's something called a weak debt. A strong debt basically is a loan due to trading in commercial goods to resell for loan money. So for example, let's say, this is referring to, let's say, a business person. He's purchased food, he's purchased mobile phones to resell. Now obviously, the retailer owes a wholesale money, doesn't he? He owes a wholesale money. So for example, he's bought, let's say, £20,000 worth of stock. So the retailer has purchased £20,000 worth of stock, for example, okay, with the intention to the retailer that he's going to resell. Okay, so now this is to do with the wholesaler now, isn't it? So this falls into strong debt. Okay, strong debt. Okay, so a loan due to trading in commercial goods to resell or loan money. So loan money, for example, Qadr Hasana, that's what he mentioned. So the item received will be the item will be zakatable and should remain with the purchaser. So in other words, what he's saying is that money that's owed to you, therefore zakatable. That will be zakatable for the person. Zakat was payable on the previous years or 20% of the total amount of money. So what that means is that money that's owed to you, that will be zakatable, but that will be zakatable even on the previous years. So if it's a strong debt, so let's take an example of the Hasana. You lend somebody £10,000 and they're going to pay you over a period of 10 years. So now the creditor, once he receives the amount, once he receives the full amount of £10,000, then he'll have to pay zakat in the previous years. Well, if he's paying installments, so that was the case that he pays it all at once. But if he receives that in installments, then it's saying that once he receives 1/5 of that, so what's 1/5 of 10,000? 2,000, isn't it? 2,000. So once he receives 2,000, he'll pay zakat on that, But in short, what we're trying to say, strong debt, if the creditor receives that money after a few years, then upon receiving it, he used to pay zakat on the previous years. He used to pay zakat on that on the previous years. Now the easiest way what I would suggest is that whether you are receiving it in installments or whether you're going to receive the full amount after 10 years, for example, the easiest way is that calculate your zakat every single year of that £10,000 in advance. Is that clear? You don't have to do it in advance, but if you want to wait until after £10,000 and then you will calculate zakat, then you can do that in installments.
So basically, somebody gives you lend somebody £10,000, they give you that £10,000, you can pay zakat back then.
Yeah, you can pay zakat on that then.
Not if somebody's giving you £1,000 a year, you pay £1,000, you
can do that as well. So it works out the same anyway. You can work out the same anyway, right? You can do either way. So either number one, if somebody was to pay you, so look at it this way. When you lend somebody money, there's one or two scenarios. Either they pay you all at once. They say after 10 years I'm going to save up £1,000 and then I will give you the full £10,000 after 10 years, right? So one scenario is that you get the full lump sum after 10 years. Then what you need to do, you need to calculate zakat every single year. You need to pay zakat in the previous years. So not only that year, but the previous 10 years you need to pay zakat on that as well. Because that money was yours, wasn't it? Yes? Because that money is yours. Because you have ownership of that money. Is that clear? That's one scenario. Or the second scenario is a person that he pays you in installments. Yes? So what the Masla is saying that once you receive 1/5 of that £2,000, then you pay zakat on that £2,000. Right? That's basically £50. And then every time that you receive the zakat, then you pay that, and then that's it. But just to simplify things, if somebody wants to pay zakat every single year of that in advance, so he knows I'm going to get it in 10 years, so he decides, look, I'm going to pay my zakat now, before I get it, even that is permissible, it's okay. Because that money still is. It's just a question of, is it wajib for him to pay straight away or not? Yes? It's wajib for him to pay zakat on the previous years once you receive the amount. But if he wants to pay in advance, that's permissible. Is that clear? Right, okay. Then you have what I said, median debt. Median debt basically a loan that due to partnership of personal goods such as household furniture, etc. So what this basically median debt is, I'll just simplify because this was the technicality, is let's say, for example, that you worked in somebody's house, right? You provide a service. So you're a plumber, for example, and you go to work into somebody's house that's worth £3,000. So you got £3,000 worth of work in the house. And they say to you, I'm a little bit of a financial crisis, inshallah I'll pay you after 1 year, 2 years. Okay, that's fine. So he does not need to pay zakat in the previous years. So if let's say he paid it after 2 years, for example, so he does not need to pay zakat in the previous 2 years. As soon as he gets that £3,000, then he will pay zakat on that year. Is that clear? That's simple. And then finally is Ra'if. Ra'if is weak debt. Weak debt basically is money that's given to you as a gift, for example, inheritance money, dowry, like a dowry, inheritance money, in khuda, for example. All these are considered to be weak debt. Pensions, for example, falls under either median debt or weak debt. In both of these scenarios, the median and the weak debt, you only pay zakat, liable to pay zakat on it once you receive it, and only of that years, not the previous years. Is that clear? So basically, to simplify it, you know the strong debt. Why is it called strong debt? Is because it's considered to be real, tangible debt. So you have to pay zakat in the previous years. In the medium and the weak debt, you don't need to pay zakat in the previous years, even if you see after 4 or 5 years. Okay, it doesn't matter. On the medium and the weak debt, you just pay zakat once you receive the money. So like a typical case would be like a dowry. She won't receive the dowry money after 5-6 years of marriage. She doesn't need to pay zakat for the previous 5 years. As soon as she sees it, she can't pay zakat for that year. Is that clear? Yeah, basically you have to sort of explain this. Acknowledge the debt or deny the debt. So zakat is divided on the debt by the creditor, and the creditor is absolved from his responsibility. Basically what I was already explained. Now, so this is some general advice. I think this slide is important. Now, general advice: know the date when you will become sahib nisab. So first of all, know the date and the time. Okay. Secondly, fluctuation of the amount throughout the year does not affect your zakat anniversary. Your zakat anniversary is determined by the lunar calendar, so you then deduct 2.5% of your zakat. So basically, well, like I mentioned about first of Ramadan. This process continues until your wealth falls below the nisab level or have lost all of your wealth. Okay? So if, for example, let's say that if it falls below the nisab level or you completely lost it, then your zakat anniversary will then renew. So if you haven't paid your zakat that year, then that remains outstanding. Now this is another thing as well now. When we talk about debt, there's also a debt of zakat as well. Okay? So let's say, for example, let's say last year, now is the year 2024. Let's say 2023, your first Ramadan is your zakat. We have not paid that zakat yet. So it's due, isn't it now? So when it comes to calculating zakat this year, right, the zakat that you owed last year, in the previous year, are you going to include that in the calculation or not that you owed? That's deductible. So that becomes like also a debt that is deducted. Understood? That is a debt now that is deducted, right? Because that is zakat that's outstanding payment. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say, for instance, let's say you had £3,000. Okay, last year you had £3,000 on the first of Ramadan, you have to calculate zakat. How much is your zakat of £3,000? 150. Yes, £25. No, yeah, no, 75. Sorry, my mistake. 75, okay, right? So £25 per thousand, so that's £75, okay? Now, you need to pay £75. You've not paid your zakat yet. Okay? Now let's say you've got that same £3,000 this year. So if you've got £3,000, how much you can calculate zakat now? So remember you had £3,000 last year, you have to pay £75, yes? You have not paid the zakat yet. Now it's 2024, first of Ramadan. Okay, so now, when you're going to calculate zakat on £3,000, how are you going to do it?
Same.
No. Because how much of debt do you have on £3,000? £75. Why? Because the £75 for last year's, isn't it? So how much zakat do you calculate now on that £3,000? 2,000 minus the 75. So 3,000 minus 75, what are you left with?
2,125.
Sorry, 2,000?
125.
2,925, exactly. So you're going to now calculate zakat of this year's from 2,925, not 3,000, because the 75 pounds is last year's zakat debt. You're going to pay that anyway. Does that make sense? A lot of people don't understand this. So this is a mistake that I still have to calculate the 3,000 rate now, because now you have to take that 75 pounds away, because that's last year's zakat, isn't it? Which you need to pay anyway, right? So that's sorted for that. So you calculate on 2,925. So wherever the zakat, wherever 2.5% of that is, then you calculate zakat of that. Now let me complicate it. Let's say 2025, inshallah we all live. You have that same 3,000 pounds. And you have not paid zakat yet of 2023 and 2024. Yes? So you have 75 pounds from 3,000 pounds. This year, you've got 2.5% from 2,925. Yes? Wherever the amount is, it's probably about £60, something like that. You still got that debt. Now, when it comes to £3,000 2025, you will exclude £60 and £75 if it works out. I'm not sure how much it works out, okay? Because remember each year that when you can't pay zakat and you're paying zakat, that is a debt. That is a debt. So that's considered debt, that will be excluded.
You do that, basically.
Yes, so you basically reduce or you deduct the previous year's zakat due that's on you. That is considered to be a debt. So that will be deducted every single year, so long as the zakat is due on you. Is that clear? And these are the main things to remember. So this is now the rules related to you giving zakat to the recipient. So when it comes to giving zakat to the recipient, there are conditions for fulfillment of zakat payable to the recipient. Number one is, we're going clockwise. Okay, let's start with the green box. Number D, transfer of complete ownership from the donor to the individual recipient, whether to himself or to his wakala. Wakala means agent, okay? Like for example, let's say paying it to now charity organizations, they represent you. Yeah. Charity organizations, they represent you, they don't represent the poor. Right? So when you give a zakat to them, they are not representing you to give them money. So long as you made the intention that this is my zakat money and they give me the receipt, they don't need to make the intention that this is zakat, because you've already made the intention already. What they need to ensure that because this is zakat, this is spent in the right way, that's all. Charity organization, that's what they do anyway. That's why they ask you is the zakat and whatever. So when it's zakat, they know this is for the poor. If it's then zakat, they know okay, they can spend it to because should be masjid or something, for example. Okay? So ownership. Niyyah, number 2 is niyyah. The yellow box is the intention to be made when giving zakat to the recipient or to his agent. Intention is not until the recipient utilizes the asset. Now let's say for example, you come across a poor Muslim. You say, you know what, zakat money wants us to give it to you. Yes? You got money. But you forgot to make the intention. You give the money to him, you walk and they think, oh, that's my zakat money. Can you make the intention now? You can't make the intention so long as the money stays with them and they've not used it. So once they've used it, now you can't make the intention, you have to give your zakat again. Right? Well, that's why, so the easiest way of you do is that when you're giving your money to the charity organization, you specify this is zakat money. They give you the receipt, that's sufficient. Now, number 3 is a Muslim. Obviously, zakat cannot be given to a non-Muslim. It has to be a Muslim because it's environment, isn't it? Now, nafli sadaqah can be given to non-Muslims. Because the Prophet ﷺ said it. Tasaddiq ala ahli adyani waliha. Give sadaqah to every religious, upon every religion. So whether it be a Christian, whether it be a Jew, whether it be an atheist, whoever, nafli sadaqah, optional trying to give them is Muslim. Right? First sadaqah, zakat you can't. When it comes to Zakat al-Fitr, there's difference in opinions. Okay, right? I've written a whole detailed fatwa on this, it's on our website. And you can non-Muslims see Zakat al-Fitr. It's on our website. You can refer to them. Of course, I'm promoting taking fatwa as well, okay? So we have a lot of all these queries there, okay? Sorry about that. Anyways, yeah, so nafli sadaqah you can give to them, zakat you cannot give to them. And this is by consensus, as far as I'm aware. According to all the four madhabs, you cannot give zakat to a non-Muslim, as far as I'm aware. And nafli sadaqah, according to all four madhabs, you can give it to non-Muslims. And finally, the poor, with the exception of Amilin, all those recipients who do not possess assets in fixed or liquid equivalent of more than themselves. So this is basically what you call a poor individual. And you know, there's a lot of discussion about about giving zakat to a poor person, a poor individual. How do you identify a poor person, back home? I think the best advice I give is that don't just go by the person's statement themselves. A lot of people send family members come to you, oh, I've got this person, I've come across this person's poor, and they say, give me zakat money. Give me one piece of advice, and since this is recorded, don't go by the individual saying that I am poor, therefore give me zakat. Okay? Before you do that, you need to first investigate. So if, for example, you have a family member who's saying that there's this poor person living in this particular village, Pakistan, Bangladesh, right? So when you give zakat, before you even do that, first ask, investigate. How do you know that they're eligible for zakat? Okay? How do you know that? How do the scholars mention that they're eligible for zakat? So you need what you call, you need reference. You need a reference from an individual you say that this family, particular family, they are poor and they're eligible for zakat. Number one. So reference. Number two is looking at their living condition. You yourself go visit them and you look at their living condition. Now, how would you know that whether their living condition is poor or not? One way you do this is that number one is the neighbors themselves, the society themselves, they testify that this person is a very poor person. So you go by the testimony of the neighbors. Okay? That's number way. Or another way to look at it is that by you visiting, you yourself assess the living standards in that community. And if you know that their living standard is very low compared to the average person, then you can know that they are poor. These are the practical advice that you need to give. So remember, so when it comes to giving zakat to a poor family back home, you have one or two things. Your first thing you have to investigate. Now, how do you investigate? You get some testimonies, reliable testimony. Let's say a reliable charity organization or a reliable family member who knows the Messiah of zakat, who's a very Messiah, or an alim or a scholar were to give to testify that this is a poor family, they are eligible for zakat. They will assess the condition of the war. Or number two, one way is that you go visit the family yourself. And this is probably the best advice I want to give. Go visit the family yourself and you assess the situation. What's their living standard compared to the average person living standard in that society? Okay? And whether other people generally testify to the fact that this person is eligible for zakat. After doing all of this, then you decide whether you give zakat to them or not. But never ever go by the individual statement themselves and say, oh, I'm poor, therefore give me zakat. That's the do not do that. Okay? Because remember, this is the case of funds, isn't it? Yes. So that's why, so this is just general advice I'm going to give. This is also just general condition about now. Eligibility of zakat. Now those who are eligible, those who are not eligible. Meaning siblings, relatives, students and friends and neighbors, they are eligible for zakat. They felt that they're poor. So when it comes to family relatives, nephews and nieces, brothers and sisters, if you have, let's say, a poor brother back home, a poor sister back home, you can give them zakat. Alright? Those who are not eligible, descendants, ascendants, Ahl Bayt, the family Jafar, Aqil, Qadir, Al-Sayyid, and welfare projects. You can't give zakat to welfare projects. Okay? Note, if someone gives zakat to a person assuming he was eligible, and he's poor, but later discovered that he was not eligible, rich, then the zakat is fulfilled. So let's say you do your investigation, and then you assume that this person was poor. You gave him zakat. Later on, you begin to realize that he was a fraudster. He was a rich person, but you genuinely investigated that this person was, you thought that this person was poor. You did everything what you could. And then he turned out to become rich, then your zakat is fulfilled. Okay, similar to the case that where you investigate the direction of Qibla, but then you realize the Qibla direction was wrong, your salat died. So likewise in this particular case as well, okay? But this is only the case if you did due diligence. If you did not do due diligence, and you just randomly gave zakat, then it won't be fulfilled. Let's say you have a relative, father's passed away, and the mother, and they have a child. Let's say the child, let's say about 10 years old. Yes. For instance, okay, right? Now, this child is your nephew. Okay, your nephew. Can you give zakat to them? Now, if the mother is working, and she's got a lot of money, and she's providing for the child, obviously, then you can't give zakat to the child. But if, for example, the woman, she has no other income, she's very poor, right? And she's relying on the donations. Or she has money, but it's just enough to fulfill essentials. She doesn't have no savings or nothing. She doesn't have any additional assets whatsoever, right? Everything that she has just within the basic needs. Then you can give them zakat. These are just some common questions that people ask. I just displayed them on the slide. So if anybody wants to know the answer to these questions, they're here. So there's question 1 and 2. Then you have question 3 and 4. You can just read that yourself. And then you have question 5 and 6. Question 5 and 6, yes. Is zakat compulsory on wealth and zakat compulsory on credit card and so on. So they're basically simple answers. And then I have questions 7 and 8. Oh, sorry. So that's questions, what question is this? 5 and 6. So that's 5 and 6, yes. That's question 5 and 6. And then you have question 7 and 8. These are common questions that people ask. Just give us straightforward answers so you can look at them inshallah on the once the final recording. Jazakumullah khair. And we'll probably draw this session to an end now because say it's quite late for everyone, and Jazakumullah khair.